Kieran Bradley stood outside one of his own stores, gripping a neatly folded sweater in his hands. He had bought this chain of high-end boutiques 5 years ago, thinking he could turn it into something special and accessible luxury brand with great service. But lately, he had been hearing complaints. Customers claiming they were ignored or treated differently based on how they looked. He had pushed back at first. "That doesn't happen here," he had told his executive team. "We train our staff better than that." But the complaints kept coming. Some customers were given premium service while others were brushed off. Annoyed and wanting answers, Kieran decided to go undercover. He wore a faded hoodie, old jeans, and scuffed sneakers. His usually well-groomed beard was left untrimmed and he wore thick glasses. He looked nothing like the CEO of an 11-store boutique chain. None of the store-level employees had met him in person, most only knew his name from company emails. Taking a breath, he stepped inside. The store was immaculate, with soft lighting and neatly arranged displays. A jazz playlist played in the background. The employees were dressed sharply in all-black attire, exuding sophistication. Kieran immediately noticed a tall, blonde woman at the front register. Her name tag read Alyssa. She was currently chatting animatedly with a customer, a man in an expensive-looking suit. Kieran walked up to the counter, waiting for his turn. Alyssa didn't even glance at him. "Excuse me," he said. "I'd like to return this sweater." She barely looked at him. "Do you have a receipt?" "No, but I just bought it last week," Kieran said. "It still has the tags." Alyssa sighed, clearly uninterested. "We need a receipt for returns, store policy." Before Kieran could respond, a woman in a designer coat approached. Alyssa's entire demeanor changed. She lit up with a bright smile. "Welcome in, how can I help you today?" she beamed. Kieran frowned. He was standing right there, yet she had moved on as if he didn't exist. "I was just asking about a return," he said louder. Alyssa barely looked at him. "Like I said, no receipt, no return." The woman in the designer coat laughed. "Oh, I never keep my receipts either," she said. Alyssa laughed with her. "For you, I can make an exception. Let me process that for you." Kieran's jaw clenched. He watched as Alyssa accepted the designer-clad woman's return without question. No receipt needed. He took a step back, observing the store. A pattern quickly became clear. Alyssa and another male employee, Jake, were only helping customers who looked wealthy. If someone in more casual or lower-end clothing walked in, they were ignored or brushed off. A young woman in a simple sundress entered, looking around anxiously. She picked up a handbag from the display, inspecting it. "Can I get some help?" she asked softly. Jake was standing nearby but acted like he didn't hear her. Instead, he walked past her to greet a man wearing a Rolex. Kieran's stomach turned. Another employee, a petite brunette named Maya, noticed the woman struggling. She rushed right over. "Hi. That's one of our best sellers," Maya said warmly. "Do you want to see it in another color?" The woman smiled, clearly relieved. "Yes, actually, thank you." Maya led her toward the counter, chatting as she pulled out different colors. Meanwhile, Kieran saw another moment of blatant favoritism. A man in worn-out sneakers and a hoodie similar to Kieran's walked in, looking unsure. He hesitated before approaching Alyssa. "Hey, I was wondering if you have this shirt in a medium," he asked, holding up a display model. Alyssa didn't even look up from her phone. "Whatever's out is what we have." The guy frowned. "Are you sure? I saw it in a smaller size on that rack." "I just said," Alyssa started, but then she spotted a woman in heels and a silk blouse entering the store. Instantly, her tone changed. "Hi there, welcome in." "Looking for anything special today?" she chirped, completely ignoring the man still standing in front of her. Kieran had seen enough. His blood boiled, but he forced himself to stay calm. He needed to see how far this went. He left the store, pulling out his phone. He had planned to stay undercover longer, maybe visit another location before revealing himself. But now, he wasn't waiting another minute. He stepped back inside, this time with a plan. Kieran re-entered the store with a quiet determination. He had seen enough to confirm what the complaints had suggested. His staff was selectively choosing who deserved good service. This wasn't just a misunderstanding or a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, ingrained in the way some of his employees operated, and it was unacceptable. He walked straight to a display rack near the counter, pretending to browse as he listened. Alyssa was still engaged in conversation with the woman in the designer coat, laughing at something the customer said. Jake, the other employee who had ignored the casually dressed customers, was now helping a man in a tailored blazer, his tone warm and inviting. Meanwhile, Maya was the only one consistently assisting all customers, regardless of appearance. Kieran watched as the man in the hoodie the one Alyssa had brushed off earlier lingered near a shelf of accessories. He picked up a leather wallet, turning it over in his hands. "Excuse me," he said, looking toward Alyssa again. "Do you have this in black?" She barely glanced at him. "Whatever's out is what we have," she said flatly. Kieran's jaw tightened. The man hesitated, then put the wallet back and turned toward the door. Before he could leave, Kieran stepped forward. "Hey," he said, catching the man's attention. "I think we might have one in the back." "Give me a second." Alyssa's head snapped up, eyes narrowing at Kieran as if noticing him for the first time. "You don't work here," she said, her tone sharp. "No," Kieran admitted, "but I know how things are supposed to work." Alyssa crossed her arms. "Then you know we don't have extra stock in the back. Everything's out." Kieran ignored her and turned to Maya, who had just finished helping the woman in the sundress. "Do we have more wallets in black?" he asked. Maya nodded. "Yeah, we should." "Let me check." She disappeared into the stockroom. Alyssa let out an annoyed breath. "I already told him we don't," Kieran cut her off. "You didn't check, you dismissed him." Alyssa scoffed, but before she could respond, Maya returned with a black wallet in hand. "Here you go," she said, handing it to the customer with a smile. The man looked genuinely surprised. He took the wallet, inspecting it. "Thanks, I'll take this one." Kieran nodded. As Maya rang up the purchase, Alyssa turned back to Kieran, her frustration barely concealed. "Are you trying to prove something?" "I don't need to," Kieran said. "You're doing that all on your own." Jake, who had been listening from a few feet away, shifted uncomfortably but didn't interject. Kieran stepped toward the counter and placed the sweater he had attempted to return earlier onto it. "Let's try this again," he said, looking directly at Alyssa. "I need to return this." Alyssa's expression hardened. "Like I told you before, no receipt, no return." "But that policy doesn't apply to everyone, does it?" Kieran asked, tilting his head. "You made an exception for her." He gestured toward the woman in the designer coat who had already left the store. Alyssa's mouth opened slightly, but she hesitated. Jake, sensing the tension, suddenly busied himself refolding shirts behind the counter. Maya, who had been silent, glanced between them before speaking. "We're supposed to ask for a receipt, but if something is clearly unworn with tags, we can process a return at the manager's discretion." Kieran nodded. "And Alyssa is the acting manager right now, right?" Maya hesitated before nodding. "So, Alyssa," Kieran continued, "why did she get an exception but I didn't?" Alyssa's patience snapped. "Look, I don't know what you're trying to do here, but we have a standard to maintain. We cater to a certain clientele. If we let just anyone walk in and demand returns without proof, this place would fall apart." Kieran's eyes darkened. "Just anyone." Alyssa's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. "We're a high-end boutique. We have to protect our image. That means focusing on customers who actually belong here." Maya looked horrified. Jake remained silent, avoiding eye contact. Kieran exhaled through his nose, forcing himself to stay calm. He had seen enough. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Tapping the screen a few times, he held it up, showing the company's official website. His own face stared back at them from the Our Leadership page. Alyssa's expression shifted from irritation to sudden realization. Jake's posture stiffened. Maya's eyes widened. Kieran let the silence stretch for a moment before speaking. "I own this company." Alyssa's face drained of color. Kieran lifted a hand. "Don't. I've been standing here for 20 minutes watching how you treat customers. Watching how you decide who deserves respect and who doesn't." Jake finally spoke, his voice tentative. We were just trying to maintain, Kieran cut him off. This store doesn't decide who belongs. Every person who walks through that door is a customer. Every customer deserves respect. Alyssa swallowed hard. I didn't mean, you meant exactly what you said, Kieran interrupted, his voice even, and it's exactly what I've been hearing complaints about. Maya, who had been silent, finally spoke. I didn't know this was happening on purpose. I just tried to help everyone. Kieran gave her a small nod, and I noticed that. He turned back to Alyssa, but I also noticed how you and Jake ignored people based on nothing but appearances. That's not just bad business, it's disgusting. Alyssa's hands clenched at her sides, but she didn't argue. Jake shifted uncomfortably. We thought we were doing what was best for the store. Kieran's voice was cold. You were doing what was best for yourselves. Another silence followed. Customers in the store had started to notice the tension, some glancing over curiously. Kieran took a slow breath before delivering his final words. This isn't how my company operates. And as of today, it's not how this store will operate either. Alyssa looked like she wanted to argue, but she held her tongue. Jake avoided his gaze entirely. Kieran glanced at Maya. You're the only one here who acted like a real employee of this company today. Maya swallowed, her hands clasped in front of her. Kieran turned back to Alyssa and Jake. We're done here. I'll be making some changes, effective immediately. Neither of them spoke. They knew what was coming. And Kieran had no intention of holding back. Kieran let the weight of his words settle over the store. The silence stretched as Alyssa and Jake stood frozen, their expressions shifting between disbelief and dread. Maya remained still, uncertain whether she should speak. Kieran turned to the customers still browsing. Some had clearly overheard the confrontation, their eyes darting toward him, waiting to see what would happen next. He couldn't let this moment drag on. He looked directly at Alyssa. You can hand in your name tag and store keys now. You're done here. Alyssa's face tightened, but she didn't argue. She reached up, unfastened her name tag, and placed it on the counter with a loud click. Then, with stiff movements, she pulled a small keyring from her pocket and set it down beside it. Kieran shifted his gaze to Jake. You can do the same. Jake hesitated, his fingers twitching at his sides. Look, I get that things didn't look good today, but I've been here for over a year. I know the clientele. I know how this store works. That's exactly the problem. Kieran's voice was steady, but there was no room for negotiation in his tone. This store works the way I say it does. And you've made it clear you don't belong in it. Jake exhaled sharply, then yanked off his name tag and tossed it onto the counter. He didn't say anything as he walked toward the back room, probably to grab his things. Alyssa followed a moment later, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. As soon as they were gone, Maya released a breath she had clearly been holding. I didn't know you were coming today, she said cautiously. You weren't supposed to, Kieran replied. I needed to see this for myself. Maya nodded slowly. I always thought Alyssa played favorites, but I didn't realize how bad it was. I just tried to help everyone the way I'd want to be treated. And that's exactly why you're still here, Kieran said. Maya blinked. Wait, you're not shutting down the store. No. But things are about to change. He pulled out his phone and tapped a quick message to his corporate office. Within moments, the district manager was notified. He then turned back to Maya. I need you to help me keep things running until I get a new manager in here, he said. Can you do that? Maya hesitated, clearly caught off guard. I mean, yes, but I've never run a store before. I've seen enough today to know I can trust you, Kieran said. You're not in charge permanently, but I need someone who actually cares about customers to help reset the culture here. Maya straightened slightly, as if realizing the weight of what he was asking. Okay, I can do that. Kieran nodded, then surveyed the store. The tension had started to ease, but customers were still uncertain. He needed to set the tone moving forward. He stepped toward the middle of the floor and raised his voice just enough to carry. If anyone here felt ignored, brushed off, or unwelcome today, I want to personally apologize. That's not how we do business, and it won't happen again. A few customers exchanged glances. Someone near the back, the man in the hoodie who had almost walked out without buying anything, gave a small nod of approval. Kieran turned back to Maya. "Let's make sure every customer here is taken care of before we close tonight." Maya gave him a determined nod. "Absolutely." As she moved to assist a couple browsing handbags, Kieran took a slow breath. Today had shown him a hard truth. Just because he owned the company didn't mean his employees were following the values he had built it on. That was about to change, and this was just the beginning. Kieran remained in the store well past closing, sitting at a sleek, black counter in the back office. His district manager, Lauren, had arrived within the hour, her expression tight as she absorbed everything he relayed. They had reviewed security footage together, confirming what he had witnessed firsthand. There was no denying it. Alyssa and Jake had operated under a bias that directly clashed with the values he had built the company on. Lauren sat across from him, tapping a pen against her notepad. "I'll handle the hiring process for a new manager, but we need to address the damage done to customer trust. If word spreads about what happened here today, it could really hurt this location's reputation." Kieran leaned back, considering her words. "Then we get ahead of it." Lauren gave a slow nod. "You want to make a public statement?" "No," Kieran said. "Not yet. Statements are easy to dismiss as PR moves. I want customers to see the change firsthand." Lauren set her pen down. "How do you want to do that?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled up the company's internal messaging system and drafted a directive. Every store in the chain would undergo immediate customer service retraining with a specific focus on unconscious bias. No one would be exempt, not even senior staff. As he typed, Lauren watched him carefully. "You think training alone will fix this?" Kieran shook his head. "Training is just the first step. We need a cultural shift. That means hiring the right people and holding them accountable. No more managers who only care about selling to a certain type of customer." Lauren exhaled, pushing her notepad aside. "Maya handled herself well today. If she sticks with us, I could see her moving up." Kieran glanced toward the door leading back to the sales floor. Maya was still out there, straightening displays and double-checking inventory. She had stayed behind without being asked, making sure the store would be ready for the next day. "She has potential," Kieran agreed, "but I don't want to throw her into management just yet." "She needs time to grow into the role." Lauren stood, stretching her arms. "I'll bring in a temporary manager while we search for a permanent replacement, someone who can reinforce the kind of service you expect." Kieran shut his laptop. "Make sure they understand why this happened in the first place. I don't want to replace one problem with another." Lauren gave a firm nod, then headed toward the door. Alone in the office, Kieran allowed himself a moment to reflect. He had built this company with the belief that luxury should be about experience, not exclusion. Watching employees twist that vision into something ugly had been a wake-up call. Standing, he grabbed his coat and stepped back onto the sales floor. Maya was stacking folded sweaters near the window display, her movements precise. She looked up when she heard him approach. "All set for tomorrow?" he asked. She nodded. "I think so. It'll feel weird without Alyssa and Jake here." Kieran crossed his arms. "That's the point. This store is going to feel different from now on." Maya hesitated before speaking. "Can I ask you something?" He gestured for her to continue. "Were you expecting today to go the way it did?" Kieran considered the question. "I expected to find some issues." "I didn't expect them to be this blatant." Maya frowned. "I always thought luxury retail was about making people feel special, not making them feel lesser." He nodded. "That's what it should be, and that's what we're going to fix." Maya glanced at the freshly organized shelves, then back at him. "I hope it works." Kieran met her gaze, his expression steady. "It will." With that, he turned toward the door, stepping out into the cool night air. There was still work to be done, but for the first time in a long while, he felt certain the company was back on the right path. The next morning, Kieran arrived at the store before opening. The air was crisp, the city streets still quiet as the first signs of life stirred in the surrounding shops. He had barely slept, his mind running through everything that needed to change. Inside, Maya was already there, adjusting a display near the entrance. She looked up when she noticed him and gave a quick nod before returning to her work. Lauren had arranged for an interim manager named Daniel to oversee the store while they searched for a permanent replacement. Kieran had reviewed his background. He had managed another location before leaving for a corporate role. Now, he was stepping in to stabilize things. Daniel arrived a few minutes later, carrying a small leather notebook. He was middle-aged, dressed in a sharp but approachable way, and had a no-nonsense energy about him. He shook Kieran's hand firmly before turning to Maya. "You've been holding things together," she straightened. "I've been doing my best." Daniel nodded. "Good. Let's make sure this store runs better than ever." Kieran watched as Daniel walked the floor, taking in the layout and checking how products were arranged. He moved efficiently, asking Maya questions about inventory, customer flow, and staff responsibilities. Everything was methodical, focused. Satisfied, Kieran pulled Maya aside. "You'll be working closely with Daniel. He knows how I want things done, but I want you to pay attention to how he operates. Learn from him." She hesitated. "You still think I could be a manager?" "You're already showing leadership," he said. "This is your chance to see if it's something you want long-term." She took that in, nodding slowly. The first customers arrived soon after opening. Kieran stayed back, watching how interactions played out under Daniel's supervision. There was already a noticeable difference. Every customer who walked in was greeted, regardless of how they were dressed. A man in a casual windbreaker hesitated near the entrance, looking around uncertainly. Before, Alyssa or Jake would have ignored him. Today, Meyer approached him with a genuine smile, asking if he needed help finding anything. Kieran watched as the man visibly relaxed and followed her to a display of jackets. This was how it should have been all along. Midway through the morning, Lauren arrived. She pulled Kieran aside near the back of the store. "I spoke to corporate," she said. "We're making the training mandatory chain-wide. Every store will go through it within the next 2 months." "Good," he said. She glanced toward the floor. "And the hiring process for a permanent manager?" "I want to see how Maya does in the next few weeks," he said. "If she's up for it, she'll get the job." Lauren considered that. "That's a big step for her." "She's got potential," Kieran said. "And after what happened here, I want someone I can trust." Lauren didn't argue. As the day went on, Kieran saw more signs of improvement. Customers who would have been overlooked before were now receiving proper attention. The energy in the store felt different, lighter, more welcoming. Toward the afternoon, a familiar face entered, the man in the hoodie from the previous day. He glanced around, seeming unsure if he wanted to stay. Kieran watched as Daniel noticed him and immediately stepped forward. "Welcome back," Daniel said. "Anything I can help you find today?" The man hesitated, then nodded. "Actually, yeah, I was looking at a jacket yesterday but didn't ask about it." "Let's take a look," Daniel said, leading him toward the display. Kieran felt a quiet satisfaction. The shift was already happening. Before he left, he found Maya near the counter. "How's it going?" he asked. She exhaled, pushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "It's different in a good way," he nodded. "Keep it that way." She met his gaze. "I will." As Kieran stepped out onto the sidewalk, he knew there was still work to do. But for the first time in a while, he felt confident that his company was on the right path.